We can just keep arguing about the draft guide before. We don't have to just debate the draft guide politics right here, right now, live.
Yeah, and the Gumroad site that they can go to.
Kyle Juszczyk was going to be released.
Cares.
From Gumroad?
Yes.
The Kansas City Chiefs have made several moves as they move towards week 1 of the NFL season, trying to get getting that roster right, trying to get it week 1 ready before the NFL draft like they try to do. Let's talk about some of the moves that they've made. Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank member FDIC, our incredible partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. I'm Ken Swanson. I'm here with Matthew Lane on the first day of legal tampering. And Maddie, there's no one I'd rather be talking to about legal tampering.
Listen, we have breaking news. Enough with the introductions, enough skirting around here. We got breaking news as we were going live for this very show. The Chiefs have re-signed James Winchester, the long snapper, to a fully guaranteed. That means he is getting every bit of this money, a $1.65 million contract. It's a 1-year deal. That is the news that we were waiting for to get this lab started. Kent, we are on fire.
This team is just making moves left and right, man. They are just checking boxes left and right. Keep moving down the line. Keep taking care of their players. And now we've got James Winchester back. There's another player that you can kind of just check off the list. This team is doing absolute work so far, man. They are just making sure that they have something in place across the board, and hey, they're getting closer to that magical goal of kind of having a let's roll out there and play week 1 roster. And I think that's kind of what we're at. And hey, James Winchester back in the fold too. We were actually looking up his stats before the game or before the show. We were just looking up how many tackles and stuff he has, and then it made us wonder if he had more tackles than Patrick Mahomes. He does. Patrick Mahomes has 3 tackles on his career. I think James Winchester had what did we say, 9?
On his career, he's got 13.
Okay.
He's missed 7, so not a great hit rate. So we don't got to dive into. Listen, we're not here to tell you if James Winchester's tackle numbers make him worth the fully guaranteed $1.65 million deal or not. We are here to deliver you the news that the Chiefs now have a long snapper on their roster.
I will say, and to quote the great Romeo Crennel, if you can take the ball and throw it between your legs backwards, you can make a pretty good living in this league. And here we are. James Winchester making $100,000 to snap the football. I'm trying to equate, how many times do you think he snaps the ball in a game? 10?
Sure.
So he's getting paid $10,000 per snap. So
how many flat snaps do you remember?
I'm none. I'm not complaining. I ain't hating either. I'm happy for my guy. I kind of want to get in that profession a little bit.
Just make a tackle.
What's the requisite three cone to be a long snapper?
Well under whatever you got cooking right now. Let me tell you that.
Under 8.
There used to be a long-standing bit about the 808 3 cone, which I unequivocally achieved 7 years ago, but that bit's been running so long that it's 15, 20 pounds ago. And 7 years ago, I don't think I could do it now, which is sad. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about every other signing here that the Kansas City Chiefs have made. They've made a bunch of moves over the last few days. And we'll start with this one. The Kansas City Chiefs have their next left tackle for at least 2025 and perhaps 2026.
Big news. In case you're wondering, James Winchester's 3-cone time was 7.04. He would dust you even still to this day. I just wanted to get that out there into the world.
Yep, that's true.
Why was James Winchester having a broad jump of 11 feet?
Dude, no wonder Dave Tobe liked this guy so much.
What are we doing here? 38-inch vert, 11-foot broad jump. It's, I mean, like, I know he can't really tackle, but like this man's got to play a real position with an athletic profile like that.
Can James Winchester rush the passer?
Well, the arm length is not on here, so I could not tell you.
Well, we'll have to dig into that. Maybe he's a little bit more spagsy than we thought. Anyways, Jaylen Moore is the new tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. Thank you for completely interrupting the flow of the show for that. That was very important. Yeah, so 2-year deal, $30 million deal for Jaylen Moore. We don't have a ton of details on the contract. Essentially, a little over $21 million is reportedly guaranteed, but we'll see how that all shakes out when it comes to signing bonus, guaranteed roster, all that stuff. Like we don't have exact numbers quite yet with that, but we have a 2-year, $30 million deal for Jaylen Moore. Just on its face, in a vacuum, how did you feel about the Jaylen Moore deal with Kansas City signing him?
Listen, I was on the breaking news team. I got to rip all my thoughts on the Jaylen Moore signing when it happened. My hesitations about it, coming around a little bit to how it could be okay, but still not fully in there. Like, we're kind of doing the hokey pokey. We have like 1 foot into even being okay with this deal, but definitely 1 foot out. But like people have heard me talk about him. So let's let you go first. You tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Jaylen Moore, and then I'll kind of come back in and see if anything has changed since earlier when I was on the breaking news team with Tucker and Josh and Nate, and we went, a solid hour on this signing.
Yeah, so I've watched Jaylen Moore a couple times in the last month-ish or so. I've put eyes on him a couple times, and I think by now I've seen, basically every snap of his over that small sample size of 2024. I actually recently watched yesterday. I watched his tape. It was his last game that he got hurt. I think that one was against the Dolphins. Was the last game that he played. Just because I'd seen some games over the course of the time, and then I just kind of wanted to see what the last game looked like, right? Just to kind of get an idea of, he hasn't had a ton of experience, and we're talking about a guy with less than a full season of starts under his belt over the course of his rookie contract. And I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what he had to offer, and as he got more snaps, what it looked like. And, I think, I think he's better than what we've seen out of Joe Thuney. I know some people have made some comments about he kind of looks like a guard playing tackle. I think there's a little bit of truth to that, but I actually feel pretty good about what I've seen over the course of the sample size as he's played a little bit more. There's some variance in his pass sets, for instance. There's no vertical setting really that we've seen at this point, which is something that the Chiefs have really preferred. But if you want to talk about like an angle set, a little jump set, mixing some things up and having a little bit of a plan as a pass protector, like we actually saw that. I think he anchors well. I think from an anchoring perspective, I actually think he does a pretty good job, absorbing a bull rush and anchoring and bending and absorbing that contact. So like that's something that they got going for him from a firmness of the pocket perspective. Like I feel pretty good about that. I think there's questions legitimately about the foot quickness as a pass protector and the length to be able to move a rusher up the arc. I think those give me pause, and that there's some reasons to be a little bit concerned about what we've seen to this point in Jaylen Moore's young career, which, by the way, I mean, less than a full season of starts and getting $15 million a year and being thrust into the position to protect Patrick Mahomes. Like the tape's interesting. The tape, I don't think the Chiefs are banking entirely on the tape. I think they're banking on him getting, making some strides and making some improvements in Kansas City, trying to develop him a little bit further and give him an opportunity to be the guy. But yeah, I think it's fair to have some hesitation and reservations about the signing. I think there's a little bit of hope involved in this deal when the Chiefs are trying to figure out the tackle position. I think there's way more to say about that, but I'll let you kind of jump in here for a second.
Yeah, I am definitely one that thinks that he looks like a guard playing tackle. And I think that after kind of going through, similar to you, I had a couple weeks here where I've been working through Jaylen Moore's film. And it doesn't take you a long time, but for me in particular, when I watch, especially this past year, he really does look like a guard to me. He looks just like Joe Thuney before the Eagles game when they had him vertical set every play. He wants to jump everybody. His success comes when he gets hands on them before the defensive end gets 2 steps into his rush plan. Once a D end gets, if a D Dean gets 2 steps, like 2 clean steps, that's where you see the lack of length. I think that's where you start to see the lack of speed up the arc really become an issue. So like the entire offense that Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco run is kind of designed to mitigate that. It's designed to allow him to, their tackles, not just him, but like this also goes for Trent Williams and Colton McKivitz on the other side, who's not good. It allows for them to get hands on rushers quickly because that's the way the offense is designed. And I think he does a pretty good job with that. Like he's pretty good at quick setting. He's got a strong grip once he's got his hands on there. His feet and hands kind of move together. So when he's latched on, he can work with somebody. He's not immediately sliding off or just riding the back hip to push them around. He does a good job mirroring, but if you don't get onto, if he doesn't get on a rusher quickly, I don't see the stuff that inspires a ton of confidence that I think that transitions to a vertical setting offensive tackle that moves the way the Chiefs typically like. Now, I've been very clear about this as we did our breaking news team on Twitter, on our KCS and Discord. That might not be a physical limitation. That could simply just be how the 49ers run their offense. It very well could be them saying, no, we want you to go jump this guy. We want you to take a very flat angled set. Like you mentioned the angle sets. Yeah, they do, but some of them are very flat. Like they are not even 45 degrees. They are flat. And so it could be the system. It might not be a physical limitation of his, but going through, I mean, we don't have that, but he's got like 100 true pass sets from this past career. I'm just like, estimating here. And even out of that, you lose 25% of them from doubles, chips, stunts, and stuff like that. You have a very small sample size that we're working with here. And it feels like anytime that he is dealing with a true speed rusher with space to work, I think he starts to look a lot like a guard would look playing outside an offensive tackle. So we'll have to see. I mean, we'll just have to see what Andy Heck can do with him. Maybe the scheme changes a little bit. Maybe he takes to it very well, and all of a sudden he doesn't look like that same type of player that he did with the 49ers when forced that. It wasn't often either. I want to be clear. He didn't lose often. His pressure rate given up is very low. He only gave up like 1 sack. I just think that when you actually parse through and see the specific types of rushes that the Chiefs see a lot more of, it's where it gets a little bit dicier.
I think he looks more like a tackle than Tooney, and I think he plays a little bit better as a tackle than Tooney did personally. It's like I do from that perspective. Like I think that's a win. One thing I do think is good though when we're looking at this, the Chiefs are walking into the offseason with a plan for a specific player that they can kind of build around. And the Chiefs didn't draft Kingsley Suamataia until the middle of the summer or the middle of the NFL offseason in late April. And so they had May, June, July to kind of try to figure some things out. They threw him into the fire immediately in training camp and said, here we go. It's March 10th. The Chiefs have a better sample size of what Jaylen Moore looks like as an NFL tackle than they do of Kingsley Suamataia walking in. And I'm trying to do the math. Maybe even Wanye. It's not like Wanye has that many starts under his belt either. And I like Jaylen Moore as a tackle more than I like Wanye Morris as a left tackle. So, I think that the baseline from last year's been improved. And now it's a matter of, okay, we've got an offseason to come up with a plan B. Hey, let's change some things how we do along the offensive line. Hey, let's figure out how we're going to help this guy. Let's figure out what we need to help this guy get better at over the course of the offseason, right? So, I think, having a plan now and giving runway to the next 6 months in preparation for week 1 is a benefit to all of this, right? I think that's way more valuable than we're probably talking about now here. So I like the fact that they're out ahead of it. I think maybe moving on a little bit, right? If unless you have more you want to just say about Jaylen. I know you said a lot.
I didn't know. I did. I'll be quick. I think the next 2 after this are going to be pretty quick. It's going to be a front and back heavy show here. I don't think there needs to be a lot of time. So just the next 2 things that we got on our little rundown. So I go a little bit longer here. A couple things. One, we didn't talk about it a lot. The run game too is part of Jaylen Moore. I do think it's something that doesn't get brought up as much. Going back through, I think he's a pretty decent run blocker, but this goes with my same idea that I just don't know what to make of taking the backup tackle with very minimal reps from the Kyle Shanahan system and putting with the Chiefs. Because when I watch him run block, he's clearly most comfortable and best on outside zone stuff. Well, guess who doesn't run a ton of outside zone nonstop? the Chiefs, right? Not that they don't run any, but that's not what they main their run game out of. So when I go back and parse through and see the 2 inside zones and the 3 gap runs a game that he has as the 49ers, it's a little bit more sluggish. He gets stood up a little bit more. I think you see the lack of power show up in some of those spots. So it's just the scheme fit from him to the Chiefs is a little tricky. And so I do think, again, this goes back to if maybe he just performs better in a new scheme and that's what they needed. And the Chiefs have seen something going back to college, the Senior Bowl, wherever. That's possible. Maybe it'll work. Maybe he'll just figure it out. Maybe the Chiefs change their scheme. There's clearly avenues for it to work out. But talking to Nate of the Breaking News team aspect of this earlier did make me feel a little better in that, yeah, whether this ends up being a long-term answer or not, or even a medium-term answer, this doesn't have to be more than a year. This is hopefully structured, and that seems to be the vibe that if this doesn't work after year 1, you're not going to be he's not going to be worse at left tackle than what they had last year. And at the worst case scenario, you spent $15 million this year, roughly, I'm just throwing numbers to it, $6 million next year based on the guaranteed money, but you only have to pay him and play him for that 1 year. That makes me feel better that there is an out if it doesn't work. I'm not saying it won't, but if it doesn't work, there's a relatively quick out without having to invest too much into it. You essentially pay a good chunk of money to push the problem down 1 more year into hopefully a better free agent class for offensive tackle or a better draft class for offensive tackle, because this year had neither.
I think, that's kind of the breakdown in a vacuum of the player and the fit and, some of those kind of things. I want to talk a little bit after the break, just kind of, maybe looking at it in the scope of this free agent class and some of that kind of stuff, because we do have some numbers on some of the other tackles and some of the tackle acquisitions that have happened over the course of the day. We'll talk about all those right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Jaylen Moore is the newest tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, coming over from the San Francisco 49ers on a 2-year, $30 million deal. We just got done breaking down and talking a little bit about Jaylen Moore, the player. I think I want to look, we kind of looked at it in a vacuum, but now I kind of just want to look at it just, 30,000 feet level, just kind of, we've had some tackle moves and some tackle acquisitions via free agency, via trade over the last 12 hours, 11 hours, however long it's been. And I just kind of want to look through all these and talk through these with you. So you're looking at Tyron Smith goes on a 3-year, $24 million deal to the New York Jets. You've got Tennessee Titans paying Dan Moore Jr., the other Moore that was out there, the former Pittsburgh Steelers tackle, a 4-year deal worth $82 million APY. Then you've got the Washington Commanders trading for Laramie Tunsil, giving up a treasure trove of picks. I guess, Maddie, my question is, if you were going to look at the 4 scenarios presented there, and all of them have their warts and issues and all that kind of stuff, do you think the Chiefs, do you like what the Chiefs did? Do you think the Chiefs got it right? What would you like to see him do of those 4?
I mean, if I got to do the exact same trade, I'm taking that for Laramie Tunsil in a heartbeat over those. I don't think the Chiefs could do this exact same deal. 1, because Washington's deal of the same picks is better. But 2, they would have to essentially they just have to outbid them, right? And I don't know what the gap is. I don't know if simply telling them to keep their 4th round pick would be for this year would be enough. I don't know if you would have to offer up the Titans' 3rd round pick, which is better. Like, I don't know what the gap is, but I would take the Tunsil deal because I get to throw Laramie Tunsil in there. And yeah, you probably got to extend him. I think he wants a new contract, but I get to not worry about left tackle for 3 years probably at all while I fix all the other stuff on this team. Because as we're going to talk about later, team still has holes. Like, they still have holes that they need to try to fill with younger players. So, like, I can just completely wipe out an entire position for multiple years with Laramie Tunsil. So I would go that route. I understand people's hesitation with Dan Moore, and I would think it's too much money that the Titans paid him. I definitely think it's a lot of money, but everybody's getting overpaid right now. Dan Moore has a surefire floor as a competent starting left tackle. Not good, not even mediocre, but his floor, the worst he's going to be, is competent. I think there's a chance that he's better than that, because this last year, I mean, he's gotten better every year. This last year, he started the year kind of good, and then as the year went on, he kind of returned to average-ish. So, like, I think it's too much money, but I think there's still a better safety net there, even with Dan Moore's contract, of that there's a floor of a competent player out there, especially if he, is progressing the way he's looked. So I don't know if I say the Chiefs got the best deal. I'm not going to say it's the worst or the wrong one, but I don't think some of the other offensive tackle stuff has been as crazy as I think other people have.
I think, like, they all have kind of different issues. And like with Tunsil, like, who knows if the Chiefs were even going to be able to do business with or with the Texans, right? I'm not even, it's not even a guarantee that, the Texans are going to go out and try to let the Chiefs kind of fix their biggest issue, right? I mean, this is two AFC opponents, right? They're going up against each other, and who knows how willing the Texans would have been to kind of participate with the Chiefs in that deal. I think that's at least worth acknowledging with all of this. I think, I would give up a lot of draft capital to just acquire Laramie Tunsil and extend him, and I think to some degree it would make sense to do that. You probably are locking yourselves in and making it a little bit more challenging to sign members of the 2022 draft class if you do that, because, that is a more sizable investment that's a more sizable investment than what you're looking at with what the Chiefs are doing with Jaylen Moore. And, the Chiefs have long-term deals that they've got to think about and take into consideration moving forward as well, with Trent McDuffie coming down the pike. Oh, Trey Smith coming down the pike. Maybe George Karlaftis, who knows? Like, I think that's the worth there. With Dan Moore Jr., like, I think there's something to be said there too, right? Like, you are settling for the next 4 years for competent left tackle play. You are settling, probably 2 or 3 years, right? You are not upgrading. Yeah. You are not throwing assets. You are not, trying to, put a bunch into investing in the left tackle position outside of Dan Moore, most likely, because, he's going to be expensive for a couple of years. You're not going to be able to cut him. Yep. You're not going to be able to take a parachute quite, particularly easily. And we know this team doesn't like to deal in dead money as part of their strategy. So with Dan Moore, you're looking at locking yourself into capable for at least a couple of years here. It's like, I think that's the downside of what they did with Dan Moore. And then I'm surprised at the deal that Tyron Smith got, honestly.
Yeah, that one's a little bit extra for a guy that is just not going to play a full year. Like, I don't even get to beat around the bush. He's just not going to play a full year. So that's a little surprising.
And I don't know, like, I don't know how thrilled I am about paying a guy with such injury issues too, because that doesn't solve the problem. Like, the Chiefs need some dependability. And to be fair, that's Dan Moore's calling card. Dan Moore started like 65 games in the NFL in 4 seasons. So, like, credit to him for that. So yeah, I think I think with Jaylen Moore, I think the Chiefs did the best they could with a tough spot, and they're in a tough spot, right? And like, I'm okay with the deal. I'm okay with them not having a big long-term commitment to a tackle that they may not be excited about. I'm excited that they have flexibility moving forward, and like, they still have a little bit of club control on Jaylen Moore if things turn out okay this year. I would like to see this team continue to add more to that room to create a little bit more stability. I'd love to see DJ Humphries come back into the mix. Somebody like that, just to add another.
If you're a veteran like DJ Humphries, are you really accepting a deal to come back to be a backup? Like, because Jaylen Moore's your starter. That's too much money to not be a starter. He's the starter. Now, if he goes into camp and stinks, obviously they will have to put somebody else over him. I don't mean that, but you don't get to pay somebody $15 million and have a true competition for left tackle. That's big. That's my bigger issue with Jaylen Moore is that here's a guy that's been a backup tackle and maybe there's upside there, but you paid him to be a starter. You didn't pay him to win a starting job. You paid him to be the starter. That's where the only pushback in like his contract numbers that come up to me is $15 million for him compared to the rest of the class is like, fine, it's whatever, because that's just where the money for tackles have gone. But I think you kind of took away the possibility of bringing in two guys to legitimately compete. It's Jaylen Moore's job unless he loses it. And like, that's the only hesitation I have with like something like bringing in a Humphreys or to roll it forward to drafting a tackle early for those that still want to do that too. I just don't know if you do that because they tried to pay a tackle. They paid somebody to be a starter. This isn't a Wanye Moore situation last year where it's you're in a competition with him. No, Moore is the starter unless he loses the job. So that's where I think it gets tricky.
Well, and here's the thing. I think DJ Humphreys is the perfect addition to this roster, and here's why. DJ Humphreys has played both tackle spots in the National Football League. And so I don't know what's going to be out there opportunity-wise for DJ Humphreys to be a starting tackle in this league next year. I don't think the tape last year was good enough for anybody to be like, you know what? I mean, there wasn't any tape. Let's be honest. Like, there wasn't. And so the Chiefs rushed him back in to try to get him ready and didn't work out, and he got hurt. And then he wasn't really able to play meaningful snaps the rest of the season. So go bring him back. His best option might be as a swing tackle in Kansas City. And again, like, you know, the Chiefs are not married to Jaylen Moore long-term, and I think they're more worried about just getting it right. But Humphreys plays both sides of the ball. He's played both sides of the ball in the NFL. And so, like, I think if the market's not good for him, like DJ Humphreys is a guy I would absolutely be keeping tabs on. He knows a little bit about Kansas City already, and he's got the tackle flex. Brian Parrott is asking, we moved up for Kingsley for 2 games and just gave up. I think not. Well, here's the thing. I think Kingsley Suamataia is your starting left guard in week 1 of the NFL season. Like, we haven't really spent much time talking about that, but this is not some failure at left, this is not some failure of a pick if Kingsley Suamataia comes in and starts at your guard position for the next 3 years. Like, that's a win. That's a dub right there. And look, Kingsley had his struggles out there at left tackle, and who knows what is, they threw him to the Wolves and it didn't work. But that doesn't mean that he can't come and play, competently at the guard position, because he did some good things in week 18. So no, the book's not closed on Kingsley Suamataia. It just might be closed on Kingsley Suamataia at the tackle spot. And yeah, they might have given up on him after 2 games, but they're going to know better than we are. And if he goes and plays great guard and does some of the things that he looked like he could do in the run game, it's a win. That's a win of a pick if he starts at guard for the next 3 years for this team. So it's not over for him either. But I do think, the Chiefs are clearly moving on a little bit from the tackle position here. And it looks like, it's not going to be a competition, to your point, Maddie. Jaylen Moore's your starting tackle. So Kingsley's not in competition. And if DJ Humphreys comes back, he's not in competition either. He's a swing tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I don't think it's giving up on Kingsley. It's just a matter of putting a player in their best spot to succeed. And whether or not we think it's fair to say, oh, Kingsley might not be the left tackle after 1 year, he was a 2nd-round pick. I don't think that we get to be upset that a 2nd-round pick had a short leash at offensive tackle if they foresee a path to him being good at all, but especially even better at guard than he is tackle. Like, that's a fine pick. If you drafted a starting guard at pick 60, what was it last year? 3? Did they traded up, or I can't remember now.
Yeah, where they trade? Like, just a couple picks.
But yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, if you drafted a starting guard there, that's a win. That's not a loss. That's not a giving up on him playing tackle. They gave him a chance at tackle. They didn't like what they saw, and I can guarantee you it wasn't just because of 2 games. It was what they saw in practice leading up to that point. I understand they saw enough to put him over the injured Wanye Morris at the time leading into the season, but like, they saw enough of him to say, we think he will be better. I'm not saying bad or anything at tackle. We thought he would be better at guard. And if you got a starter there, that's a very good draft pick. That's a very good draft pick if that's the way it plays out. So no, I don't consider that giving up. It's just finding the right spot to use him.
Okay, so the Chiefs made another move over the weekend. They re-signed Nick Bolton to a 3-year, $45 million contract with $30 million guaranteed. I don't know if we even have the structure quite yet on that one either, but the Chiefs have brought Nick Bolton back. Maddie, I know you were on the breaking news team for that one, right?
Yes, I was.
High level, quick thoughts for those that haven't seen it, and I'll just jump into my takes.
You know, he is the extension of Steve Spagnuolo on the field. I'm gonna make it as short and concise as I can. If you really need a deep breakdown into all sides of like the Nick Bolton signing, re-signing, you can go listen to the breaking news team. It is on YouTube. You have it in a podcast form. But the dirty part of it is he's the extension of Steve Spagnuolo on the field. He communicates from the secondary to the linebackers to the defensive line. He is the go-through piece. We have seen Drew Tranquill take a step into that role in bits and pieces 2 years ago, and he was fine, but it wasn't as good. The team as a whole was not as good when Drew Tranquill was playing Mike, whether that was while Bolton was injured or when they were doing the thing where Bolton took a series off every single game. It wasn't as good with Drew Tranquill at Mike. Drew Tranquill then came back last year for the Chiefs and took a step back. He wasn't as good last year in the role that he was in as he was the year before. I don't think the Chiefs felt comfortable with anybody they had on the roster being that extension of Steve Spagnuolo. If they are potentially going to lose Justin Reed as well, they need one of those two leaders back in the middle of the field. They chose the guy that they probably feel is harder to replace from the options that they had available. And I think where you want to go with this is once you start looking around the free agent linebackers and what they all got paid, it's not like Nick Bolton was severely overpriced compared to the other contracts going out there at the linebacker spot. So it kind of seems like they paid him about what he's going to be, what he's worth compared to other linebackers.
Yeah, and maybe if he does hit the open market, he gets a little bit more, maybe. We'll see. I mean, Jamie and Sherwood, the Jets linebacker, got the exact same deal that Nick Bolton did just a couple hours afterwards, right?
Yeah.
I think I understand. I think I see both sides to this because, like, personal preference, I like having more dynamic ability at the second level of a defense. And like those things don't necessarily exist with Bolton when it comes to, being able to play man coverage at a high level or, being a dynamic sideline to sideline player. There are physical limitations. And I think we've all settled into a place where we can all acknowledge those. I think, when he first came in, for me personally, the physical limitations were frustrating for me because I don't like to invest in linebacker unless it's going to be someone that has some dynamic ability. For me, though, like I think the pendulum swung too far with him where you have to acknowledge and appreciate what everyone in the building tells you about Nick Bolton, the defensive leader and the high football IQ player and the value that he has. And like I think there's been small moments that shows up. It's been in high leverage moments that, you've seen, Nick Bolton help free up a rusher, have conviction on the calls that Steve Spagnuolo has given him and telling him, like giving him validation that that's the right call and those kind of things. Like there's a good dynamic between him and Spags. I think in a year, in an era where the Chiefs are going to have to go and kind of navigate between, closing things out with this 2022 draft class and a lot of those players that are in the back end of that defense and ushering in a new wave of talent, most likely over the next couple of seasons in the back seven of that defense, having Bolton as a bridge is probably more valuable than we're acknowledging right now. As far as like they need somebody to, I think somebody's going to in the back seven to kind of help bridge that gap, right? Because there's going to be a lot of turnover, but also it's good to have some continuity here in 2025 as this team tries to figure some things out. And there's a lot of continuity in the back end of that defense now. There's a ton of players back in that back seven for one final year, and that's going to be huge too. And yeah, if you look at the landscape of the linebacker market, I'm not beat up about it. I mean, that was the tippy top of fine. I think I was fine with it. Like in general, I don't love paying linebackers, period. But like, I get it. I get why they did it. I'm fine with it. But that's the very tippy top threshold of fine for me. I think anything more, if he got the Zach Bond deal, I wouldn't be happy with it. But he didn't set the market. He really didn't come close to setting the market. He was appropriately valued for how free agency was gonna put him, and below that elite tier and into the very good tier. And he's very valuable to the Chiefs defense, the Steve Spagnuolo. So I felt fine with it. I was fine with the deal, and I think just continuing to keep keep the band together to a degree has some value.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think I had said this somewhere too, there's going to be 18 times this upcoming year where I'm yelling at Nick Bolton because he's getting outrun by, Patrick Ricard level of speed guys. And it's going to be frustrating and I'm going to hate it. It's going to happen. But guess what? If I go back and watch even Anthony Hitchens, who was also a very smart linebacker that was kind of like the same concept of an extension of the defensive coordinator, go back and watch some reps of him. You'll find at least 18 times where the defense maybe wasn't all on the same page. And you know what's equally as frustrating as seeing a fullback outrun a linebacker or a quarterback outrun a linebacker? Watching guys not be on the same page and people be, running wrong coverages or being in the wrong spots. And as much credit as we give to Spags and this Chiefs defense for having very few, they blow very few coverages. Very rarely is there just a straight up miscommunication where guys are wide open or one half of the defense is doing one thing, the other half's doing another. And it sounds really easy to just find somebody to do that, but it's not. If it was that easy, you would never have any smarter linebackers that are just downhill players that have limitations get paid at all, because it wouldn't be worth it. But yet here we are, right? Like that's what makes these people good. And so it's just, it'll be frustrating about some of the limitations, but you also have to remember the things that he does do well maybe aren't as obvious as losing a foot race. And if they weren't there, you would be equally as frustrated about those things.
100%. And it's a little bit of blind trust, right? But I trust Steve Spagnuolo and the organization enough to believe that that's more valuable than we realize. And it's more tangible than just the physical abilities of Bolton. One other thing, another reminder, Nick Bolton wasn't even the starting linebacker his rookie season. Anthony Hitchens was the green dot that first year. And so, I think that's at least worth kind of acknowledging there too, is there's a high bar to clear for, comfort with Steve Spagnuolo, and a guy that Spags loves maybe more than anyone ever, some are saying, needed a year too in this system. So I think that's, it's a high bar to clear to be Spags Mike in his green dot. And, I think the Chiefs wanted to make sure that they weren't losing out on that guy. So I'm fine with it. Don't love it, but I get it 100%. It's fine. Fine's the line. And I think that's all you can live with in free agency. We have one more big signing that the Chiefs made today, and then we'll look at some of the best remaining free agents right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
The Chiefs made one other move early on in the legal tampering period on Monday, signing another San Francisco player. Running back Elijah Mitchell has been added to the Chiefs on a 1-year deal worth up to $3.5 million. We don't know any of those contracts details yet either, and probably won't until, things become a little bit more official. But the Chiefs have addressed the running back room, and they've addressed it very quickly this week. Maddie, what were your takes on adding Elijah Mitchell to the room?
It's a worthwhile swing on a player who has been very injured in the NFL that we haven't really seen play at all for over a year. And even the last time he played, it was in very limited work, and it was at a significant step back from where he was as a rookie or in his limited action in his second year when he also got injured. So if I'm not mistaken, this is like a vet minimum kind of thing. It's like an up to 3.5. It sounds like it is about as low as you can pay somebody. So it sounded like it was incentive laden. And so there's no qualms with it whatsoever. They brought in a guy that once upon a time was a dynamic home run hitting fast running back to pair with Pacheco, who despite being fast is not a dynamic home run hitting running back whatsoever. So theoretically, I get it. That's a no risk, semi high reward. I called it like a discount version of J.K. Dobbins, right? And that's what it is to me. It's as like J.K. Dobbins last year, but as a play that's has not been quite as good, whether in college, or even like at his peak in the NFL. Fine signing. I think that the hole at running back still exists because I don't think you can trust Elijah Mitchell to even be healthy for week 1 at this point in time.
I think we'll see how the contract shakes out, but it's, probably a case of they like the value enough to just pull the trigger quickly. And, I think the running back market's going to be interesting this year because it's not going to be as hot as it was in years prior. And the Chiefs played around with trying to get a running back last year. I think you just brought J.K. Dobbins up, right? They tried to go after him and they were disciplined in what they were willing to give him, give up. And Dobbins did some really good things before getting hurt yet again with the Chargers. I think this is just another, this is them getting out ahead of it a little bit and pulling the trigger quickly to make sure that they get somebody into the running back room. And this is a guy that definitely has some juice and has shown and displayed some juice in the past. He's got some home run hitting ability. He's got sub 4.4 speed, or at least did coming out of college. And there's a little bit of juice here. not much of a pass catcher. I think he averaged 2.3
Yeah.
yards per catch last season.
I've seen people compare him to Jerick McKinnon, and like maybe there is a hidden receiver in there. Like it's definitely possible. I even went back and quickly looked, through some draft stuff that we had done when he was coming out and like his stats in college. He's not a proven pass catcher in any stretch. And if you look at like his target distribution, it looks like it's predominantly screens, check down, stuff like that. It's like maybe he is a Jerick McKinnon type player that has some juice, but I don't know if we have seen that proven out at all, whether in the NFL or in college, to like have that as an expectation on him.
I like to think that, and I gotta go see if Elijah Mitchell was just playing in these games while Jaylon Moore was playing left tackle. But I think it'd be funny if they're just like, wow, Jaylon, Elijah Mitchell looks good here. Actually, I don't even know if Elijah Mitchell played at all last season.
He did not play at all last year, and he was barely played the year before that, and then still barely played the year before that.
Buddy has been going through some things. But I mean, he was almost 1,000-yard rusher on 11 games in his rookie season, and he absolutely had some juice. And he caught the ball a little bit more in that season. 19 catches, 137 yards that season. But in 2023, it was not looking pretty for him. But
he had 151 yards after the catch that year, by the way. He had 137 receiving yards, and 150 was after the catch.
So nothing past the line of scrimmage is really what I'm hearing here. But yeah, no, I like it. Just throw him into the mix. Pacheco, Carson Steele. I don't think this keeps the Chiefs from drafting or running back at some point in this draft coming up. I don't
think it changes that at all. Like I know you're not big on like they might go on day 2 running back, but if they were going to, I don't think this would change that, even that aspect. This isn't even enough of a big deal because you don't know about the injury history and where he's at to even say, oh, now we can go from a round 2 to a round 5 running back or round 4 running back, right? Like this is a no matter. It just doesn't impact the draft whatsoever. Whatever their plans were at running back should still be the same based on this.
By the way, I'm not saying I wouldn't want the Chiefs to draft a running back in day 2. I just kind of wonder if they're just going to try to prioritize every other position and then get lucky round 4 later. That's just what I'm wondering if that's how they approach it. But yeah, Elijah Mitchell back is in the mix in Kansas City, and we'll see what he's able to do this season in 2025 with the Chiefs and what that looks like with that running back rotation in general. Okay, before we get out of here, we wanted to look at maybe just some of the free agents that are left. Right, the first wave has kind of come out and it's over, but now we're looking at kind of just like the next tier and some guys that are still available. So Maddie, I guess like first off, like what position do you think you want to see the Chiefs try to go after at this point with what they have on their roster? What do you want them to prioritize? I have one. I want to
pivot the conversation a tiny bit. Yeah, I want to pivot the conversation, then we'll go into like the players. It's early in free agency. There's plenty of time to happen. This is not a panic of there's nobody left or anything like that. That said, some of the positions that the Chiefs definitely need some players at have gotten real thin, and there has been some reasonable prices that have come out of it. And I specifically want to go to the defensive tackle spot.
Yep.
Boy, there's been some big deals, but there's been some very reasonable deals for all different types of defensive tackles, whether you want true 2-down run stuffers, whether you want nose tackles that are good run stuffers, but don't have to come off the field just because it's 2nd and 7, or guys that are like a little bit like 3-tech penetrators that are passers. Like there's been a lot of defensive tackles that got signed today, other guys that got cut too, but like seeing the Chiefs just kind of wait that out and not add anybody was a little disappointing. It's not that there's nobody left, but like when I coming back over here and just looking at the guys that are gone, I mean, you got Tier Tart's gone, Sebastian Joseph Day, BJ Hill, Poona Ford, DJ Jones, who else was Tadarius Slayton's gone. Like it was just everybody coming off one after another. Bobby Brown, just one after another on very reasonable deals.
Jaron Reed.
UK Kinlaw wasn't a reasonable deal, but the rest were very reasonable deals, right? Not playing in that market and now being stuck deciding between guys that are very explicitly one-way players. They either just play the run or they just play the pass. And even still, they're not as good as the guys already gone. That was a little disappointing to see how hot the D-tackle market was. And I don't mean expensive. I just mean like how fast those guys were going off and the Chiefs just kind of check out of it. Now, big names still out there. Jonathan Allen, still available, right? I think Javon Hargrave technically still available, although like he just refuses to play the run anymore. So you got to figure out what you would do with that. But like there's still some big names out there, but we're talking a little bit more money, most likely, than guys that have gone. I don't know. That was a weird situation for me, seeming the Chiefs have exactly one defensive tackle on the roster right now.
Well, yeah, you could throw a couple of the, 90-man roster signings, and they have a couple bodies, but they really don't have any rosterable 53-man players that are currently sitting out there on that roster. And there's still some, like, it's not completely, picked over. And I wonder if they're trying to moneyball it a little bit just because they know how deep this draft is, that they're hoping that they're
like
going to
every year.
I know, but catching some value maybe as trying to catch some value on some real cheap deals, as the free agency wave kind of hits, because we saw so many teams releasing some of their older, more expensive defensive tackles this week, and I wonder if it's just gearing up for the draft and knowing that you're going to get younger and cheaper on in some cases better along the defensive line.
But then that was just weird. I agree with that, but then it was weird that everybody was signing on day one to decent money all these other defensive tackles that were better than the guys that were cut. Like, that's where it got weird to me, right? It's like, on one hand, teams were releasing older veterans, but they were signing anybody that was not all of them were young, but they were younger. It's just, they were also, it's a hot market, but also people were cutting and releasing people. It's just a weird situation was all.
And I think, some zigging where some people are zagging. So like maybe the Patriots aren't going to go defensive tackle early in the draft now because they drafted Milton Williams, and, maybe the Panthers feel less apt to be early addressing a pass rusher along their interior because they gave Tershawn Wharton the absolute bag.
They also got Bobby Brown. If Derek Brown comes back and is healthy, plus Bobby Brown, the Tershawn Wharton rotating in, that's a pretty good little rotation there at the D tackle spot, actually.
So, maybe a little zigging where other people are zagging to try to catch value elsewhere at different positions because you're going to have better pickings there. Like, there's some approaches that you could see, some teams trying to take care of, and like the market on the defensive line is a little bit suppressed, even though some people have got paid. Like Turk, I'm so happy for Turk, man. Like,
a lot of money, man.
Sidebar,
a lot of money.
There's no chance I think the Chiefs could have given Tershawn Wharton anything closely resembling what he got from the Carolina Panthers, but getting a 3-year deal worth up to $54 million. I think it's going to settle in at $345 with some incentives. I'm happy for that guy, man. I mean, that dude's been through so much as a D2 undrafted free agent, has an injury, comes back, basically plays on a small deal here in Kansas City this year, and just goes out and balls out, gets 8.5 sacks, and goes and gets absolutely paid. Like, I'm just happy for him. But I think we'll see what the Chiefs do. We'll see how much they invest in the interior of the defensive line too, because they haven't really spent a ton outside of Chris, but they've always had the luxury of a Turk Wharton along the interior too. So fascinating to see what the rest of that market looks like along the interior. Any other positions you'd like to see the Chiefs try to play in?
Yeah. Also defensive end, because they have currently, and he's still available, but Charles Omenihu is a free agent right now. He has not been brought back. Similarly, I think that the defensive end market it's not cheap. I don't want to say these are cheap, but it's not exploding. Like, most of the contracts I've seen along the defensive line the defensive end position have been relatively on par with what I think a lot of people wanted. Yeah. Deo Owendingbo got a big contract, like bigger than I, probably would have paid him, but he's a younger guy that could still be going up. We just saw Chase Young got a deal, and I thought he was actually really good last year. So I fully understood his deal. I feel like the defensive line across the board, the contracts have been pretty fair and even. And since the Chiefs have holes, at defensive end and multiple at defensive tackle, would have been nice to see them play in there a little bit here before it all gets taken away. I will say, at least with the edge spot, there's a few more guys available, I think, that matter than there are left at D tackle. D tackle is getting really thin now. Like, I understand the idea of maybe waiting for value at D tackle, like you were saying, but like, we're at real deep now. Like, you're trying to get situational players now is kind of what's left, unless you're going to be the Jonathan Allen team. Whereas defensive end, I think you have some guys that fit higher up in a rotation that aren't just so singular. So maybe that's where a little bit of money can go. Safety, still intrigued. I don't trust Brian Cook as of right now to be a full-time starter and the leader of the back end. So I would love for them to bring in a vet. Justin Reed, still available. So maybe he can come back. But like those are the two positions that I would be most focused on, I think, right now.
It's fascinating just because I do think that this could be a very defensive draft too. Like that's what's so it's just weird because like I could see the Chiefs investing in safety. I could see the Chiefs investing in the defensive line. And like defensive line is easier because like you can always invest. You can sign a free agent and then easily draft one early because you're going to have some tougher decisions to make you're always going to need defensive line. You're always going to need to emphasize those. So, but I don't know who's a defensive end that you'd like to see the Chiefs go after.
I mean, like he doesn't fit the profile, but I think his play kind of says like Azeez Ojulari. He's physical versus the run. He's got the length. He's just a little bit lighter, but like he is somebody that I do think would earn, reps with this team over time. If you don't want to deal with that kind of size, and you just want to get someone that fits the Spags mold that deserves reps on the field, Joseph Osai is still, a fine, capable player that gets into rotation.
Well, he's a Bengal.
Is he? Oh, did he re-sign with the Bengals?
He came back. Yeah.
I missed that one. Okay, that's fine. We'll go with another guy coming off his rookie deal, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, unless he has also re-signed. Like, there is still guys out there that I just think belong in a rotation that aren't limited to single-use players like some of the D tackles. Like, there's still some guys really. Losing the Chase Young one kind of put a damper on that. He was like the last guy that was like a good that was available, but there's still some players out there.
Some players that matter, according to Matt Lane.
Ish.
Do you want to see the Chiefs try to get in the receiver market at all?
Sure, why not? I mean, listen, I think the Chiefs still have a lot of holes. The Chiefs haven't really done a lot in free agency. Like, whether it's re-signing their own guys that have left or anything, like they had, even going into at the Super Bowl with that whole roster complete, they still had holes, and they've only gotten more holes since then. And even the guys that they've added haven't filled anything. I don't think you can say that left tackle's definitely taken care of. I know we said Jaylen Moore's a starter, but like you can't say it's taken care of. Left guard is maybe a gap. We'll see how it plays out. But like, I don't think they filled any of the gaps they were missing at the Super Bowl. That was part of the reason that they couldn't put up a better game. So yeah, wide receiver I think matters. Bringing Hollywood Brown was nice. But until Rashee Rice is healthy and definitely able to play, you're missing somebody else there. You still don't have an outside wide receiver on the team that's like consistently good at beating press, that's consistently good at winning. I don't want to say contested catches, but beating physical coverage. So getting somebody else out there that can do that, yeah, would maybe be fun. Now, is there a lot of guys available that can do that? No. But you want to throw... They also lose Justin Watson. Tuck's guy, Justin Watson, is no longer coming back. They need a sacrificial X wide receiver, bare minimum. That's not Hollywood Brown. So Are you going to go pay Tylan Wallace to try to become that guy? He's a little smaller, but he kind of played that role in college. Do you want to go pay, I don't even know what's left, Noah Brown to do that a little bit? Like, you're going to have to find somebody to even take that sacrificial X role. That's not even asking for an improvement over last year. You just need to fill that role. So like, I don't know. I think they got plenty of work to do left in free agency, and we'll kind of see how it plays out.
Well, the Chiefs will be making more moves assuredly over the course of the next couple weeks.
You hope. What about you?
Promise
you didn't say anything about what you want to do.
I think defensive line. I think if you're looking at how the Chiefs like to operate, right? And it's like, let's have a team that we can roll out week one if we needed to before the draft. Defensive line's the last big one, right? Like you could make an argument that they're comfortable enough at not better, better, whatever. QB, running back, receiver, tight end, offensive line, edge, linebacker, secondary. Like you could make a case that they could roll out a team week one and be capable, competent, and win some football games. It's interior defensive line. They just don't have that, they're not roll out week one ready along the interior. And so I'd like to see them add some bodies there. I do think that that's a place in the draft that makes a lot of sense for them right now too. And that could be best value. That could be best player available potentially. Maddie, I mean, it could be safety. It could be safety. It could be defensive tackle. It could be linebacker. That's the best player available at 31 right now. Like there's, it could be receiver, running back.
All these positions you said they need players at. That's the whole point. Like they can roll the ball out there and probably go play a game right now with everything but D tackle. I don't think they'd feel good about their defensive ends rolling the ball out to play right now either. Like I don't think that they want those to be their starters.
Sure.
But Everything else, they could essentially roll a team out there that can go play right now besides D tackle and defensive ends. That's why I just think trying to shore up some of these spots, though, before the draft would be very beneficial. And it's just some of those positions, mainly D tackle. Defensive ends getting a little thinner too, though. Those positions are getting a little thin to get guys that you feel good about being your starter or being as part of a rotation as we keep going. So you want to take best player available. You better start filling some of those in so you don't feel like you have to get a defensive end in round 1, or you don't have to get a defensive tackle in the top, by the Titans 3rd round pick, just so you can have that flexibility, because they have quite a few left. So
whatever moves come down for over the next week, KC Sports Network will have great coverage with the breaking news team, all the great shows that we have across the network all week. We've got you covered. The KCSN Substack, Herbie Tiopi is there doing some great work as well. So we have everything covered for whatever free agency moves happen next. Breaking news team will be back whenever there is one. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
just go pay Javon Holland.
Ooh.